With the stem cell and the majority of the rest of this lesson, you're going to use the PowerPoint mostly. I'll go through the power slides here, but you're going to use the PowerPoint mostly in order to work through the Google Doc. I'm just going to focus on what I believe is important. The preamble, you'll notice that a lot of my lessons I give a preamble, and this time it was about genetic technology, was to set you up for the product of the week. But a lot of this straight knowledge, you can read the PowerPoint and learn exactly what you need to know. Okay? So with stem cells, what's important here is knowing that all organisms, but most organisms will start with a single cell. And that means the sperm fertilizes the egg and you end up with a thing called a zygote. And that zygote, that first cell that was you, it had the ability to become every single type of cell. It could become your skin, your nerves, your muscle, sperm or eggs, whatever you name it, it could become it. That one cell. That one cell then undergoes mitosis and becomes 2 and 4 and 8, and it keeps on going and dividing and dividing. And what's interesting is every single cell that divides has exactly the same DNA. If you look at the DNA of your skin, the DNA of your brain, the DNA of, wherever you're looking at your body, they all have exactly the same DNA. That doesn't change. So the question then becomes, if they have the same DNA, why does a skin cell look so different from a muscle cell, look so different from a nervous cell, for example? And that has to do with the fact that the different cells have different parts of their DNA turned on. The skin cell has the expression of very specific genes that code for and express skin. The nervous cells have very specific part of the gene that code for and help express the nerve cells. Right? So this is stuff we'll talk in more detail in the senior biology classes if you take them. Right? So here is an interesting clip. And one of the first questions that you saw in the Google Doc was, do you have the ability to regrow an arm?
Now, we're going to have a look at the way in which an amputated limb grows over the course of about 90 days in a salamander. That's a time-lapse movie, watching that thing grow. And now we're going to see what's really going on. Here's the salamander, and it's got a completely new limb. It looks perfect. It has inside bone, it has nerves and muscle, and it can even wiggle. In fact, it's perfect. Now we're going to cut it off. But here's the good news. It grows back. So don't be too scared. First, wound healing. Did you see that wound heal? Now we're watching what the newt can do that we cannot do. Cells are streaming out of the surrounding tissues.
So I encourage you to watch that entire video. I only showed you a part of it. And we do not have this ability, but we have animals that we study in order to determine how is it that they're able to do this. Can we replicate this in humans, and can we help people regrow an arm, a leg, or whatever body part? I have an axolotl that I would have brought in at this point, and maybe during this video I should have gone downstairs and got, it's a water animal, so I can't just bring it out. And this axolotl is, I had two. I had the school axolotl, I had my axolotl. And my axolotl at home was slightly bigger. And I brought the school axolotl home and I put it in the same tank. And one of the things about axolotls is that they're cannibalistic. They're cannibals. They eat each other. But only if they're very different sizes. And I looked at the two axolotls and I said, you know what? They're close enough in size. So I left them in the tank. And I went upstairs and I did my thing. And then the next day, Darian comes up and he's like, Dad. I was like, yes. The axolotl is missing his leg. And I was like, okay. I took a look. I didn't think it was that big a deal. It was only a leg, whatever. Next day, comes back. He goes, Dad. I was like, yes. The axolotl is missing all its legs and its tail. I was like, oh, okay. Well, at that point, I decided I better take it out. If you look at the axolotl 6 months later, 3 months later, you'd see that it had grown back all its legs and its tail. It has that ability. So cells are specialized, right? At the beginning, a stem cell has the ability to become anything. But eventually, at some point, there's a program that turns on and that cell becomes specialized, and it specifically has a job, and that's it. It can only do that job. When that occurs, the cell is no longer unspecialized, it's now specialized and specific. Different cell types in your body have different roles. So your cells will specialize so that they can take on those roles, whether or not it is muscle, blood, skin, or nervous. you should understand why stem cells are so important. So I'm not going to spend much time with this particular next set of slides, but I'd like you to work through this, and then you're going to decide whether or not you want to do you're going to decide how important stem cells are. Imagine having a disease. Imagine your pancreas doesn't work properly, or imagine you having a severe burn, and so you need to get a transplant or a graft or something. Your immune system fights anything that doesn't belong to you. So if you want to get the best skin graft or the best kidney or whatever, it's best to take it from yourself. But I mean, you can't. You lost it. Suppose you could grow your own kidney or grow your own skin. If you had a stem cell and you were able to make it produce, as it once could, any cell inside your body to become any tissue, become any organ, then that would be fantastic. We're not there yet. One of the issues that happen with this, and I encourage you to click on this video and watch the embryogenesis, how a single cell becomes specialized in all these different body parts. One of the things that is an issue, or was an issue, the only place we can get these stem cells was from a blastocyst. So after the sperm fertilizes the egg and it goes through mitosis, it produces this special structure that has a bunch of cells. And the inner cell mass right here, which is very early on, was the only place to get those stem cells. And if you took those stem cells out, that could become anything, and you could experiment with them, you destroyed the blastocyst, which meant that it could no longer be a frog, a dog, a human, or whatever. So, as you can imagine, there's a lot of ethics associated with this. And when we start talking about ethics, we start looking at science as to whether or not we can do it, but should we? Right? That's the question. So we could save people's lives. Some people has a deadly disease, something's going to shorten their life, it's going to kill them. Can we, or should we, focus on the research that might help them, even though it's a kind of a morally gray area? There are various places where you can get embryonic stem cells. Originally, you had to get it from a blastocyst. So that means you're breaking apart a blastocyst and so on. The same technology that's used to create these stem cells from the embryonic stems, using the stem cells in order to help a person create a new kidney or pancreas or whatever, that's the same technology that will allow us to clone a person. You see these science fiction movies all the time of someone being cloned, and that's kind of a scary proposition. I mean, the idea that we can clone another human. We've done it with sheep, and we've done it with some other animals. But what happens if you clone a human? Suddenly, is this clone a living, thinking person? Do you just rip out organs out of it and put it into a person, the original person, if their kidney fails? Do they have rights? Do they have, the option of not giving up their body parts? So you get into this really weird possibility, this science fiction world that's not so sci-fi. So there's an ethical debate. And I encourage you to work through the slides, read them, take an opinion, take a side. So what's interesting, as we look at this debate is kind of an old debate now. And as you go through the Nearpod of asking you to choose A, B, C, or D, what would you choose? And I'll share the results with the class. But the truth is, in 2020, this is not as much of an issue, because we can now get stem cells from another place except for the embryo. We can take cells, we can induce them to become we can induce them so that they are able to become any type of cell in your body. At least that's the way the technology is working. So we don't use embryonic stem cells as much. We're able to use stem cells from other parts that we've created from other cells inside your body. So this is no longer as much of an issue. However, the debate and the moral issues, the ethics associated with this is excellent. This is something that we see in science all the time. A couple of years ago, you probably heard about this Chinese scientist who genetically modified these babies, and he was trying to make them immune to AIDS or something like that, and he modified them without permission. The scientific community was in an uproar. And so should we genetically modify humans? Should we, if a child is going to have a disease, should we go in and genetically modify the child so it no longer has the disease? If that child's going to be shorter than normal, should we genetically modify them so they're a normal height? If that child is going to not be very fast and win the Olympics, should we modify them so they can win the Olympics? At what point do we stop? When are we allowed to, and when are we not? So you are now going to be participating in a debate. So when you look at the Google Doc, you'll see that there's a choice, and the place to do this is inside D2L. There's going to be, you have to find a partner, and you're going to choose either precision medicine or transgenics. The transgenics is where you take a gene, you incorporate it into another gene, you recombine it, and then you typically modify an animal or plant. Precision medicine, I talked about a very precise way of focusing the medicine on a particular person. But there's pros and cons associated with them. So choose either precision medicine or transgenics, and you can have a little micro debate inside D2L with the partner. Okay? All right. So that sets us the stage for moving on. So the hierarchy of cells. Where do they go once you have more than one cell? So this is a place I always like to start. When you take a group of atoms and you put them together, you can end up with a molecule. You take a group of molecules together in a biological context and you end up with organelles. You might remember at the very beginning of this, I assigned 1 or 2 people to every major organelle, and it was a Google Doc, and I don't know, I haven't gone back and taken a look at it. Hopefully you've looked at the organelles. We last looked at them in grade 8, I believe. You take a group of organelles like the mitochondria and the centrioles and the nuclear membrane and so on, and you end up with a cell. That's where we are at grade 10. You take a group of cells, and they have a common function, and that produces tissue. That's also a part of this course. You take a group of tissue and give them a common function, and that gives you an organ. That's a part of this course. You take a group of organs and you give them a common function of breathing, so the lungs and the alveoli and the bronchial tubes and the bronchi, the trachea, and you end up with an organ system, the respiratory system. And that is also a part of this course. Then we take the organ systems and put them all together, and you end up with an organism, which is more grade 11 biology. You take a group of organisms and you put them together, you end up with a population. That was grade 9 ecology and grade 12 population genetics. Populations all interwoven and working together create a community. A community with the abiotic factors make an ecosystem. A group of ecosystems from grade 9 geography, you learn that's a biome. And then all the biomes and where everything's living on the planet together, that thin little slip we'll talk about during climate change, is known as the biosphere. So that is the hierarchy that we use to represent our life. So we're focusing on the cells to organ systems. So this part here is very straightforward. So use the PowerPoint, work your way through, and write down the definition of tissues, organs, and organ systems. Okay? Recognizing that your tissue starts from a unspecialized cell called a stem cell. There are 4 major tissues in an animal: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous. You're writing that in the Google Doc. I've given you the major roles that they have. Okay? If I were to pull this up here, here's a chicken. So in the chicken, we could see a representation of all these tissues. So these 4 tissues include the muscle. Let's start with the epithelial. So epithelial refers to the outside covering. So you'd probably say that's your skin. Good. So your skin, what does it do? Or epithelial, it lines and protects the organs. The muscle, this is the protein. So often it's a chicken breast. Right? And the muscle, it allows movement. Connective tissue is exactly like the word sounds. Connects, supports, and protects the body. So that's your bone, it's your blood, it's your ligaments, it's your tendons. And of course your nervous is all about communication. Okay. In the plants also have tissue too. You're learning about animals and plants. So in animals, we have a stem cell that becomes many cells that creates these various tissues, these 4 major types of tissues in an animal. In a plant cell, the stem cell is actually called a meristematic cell, and it can become one of 3 tissues: epidermal, ground, or vascular. So once again, you'll read through the PowerPoint to get a good understanding of what they are. You should know the function of the three tissues. The dermal being the outside is equivalent to the epidermal of the animals. The vascular conducts liquid, so water up and sucrose or sap down. So it's equivalent to our blood vessels. And the ground tissue is basically everything else. If you're not dermal and you're not vascular in a plant, you're ground tissue. And these are made up of many different types of cells. So work your way through the PowerPoint, get a feel for it, and write down the appropriate words into your Google Doc. Okay? Much of this we'll talk about in more detail in grade 11 biology, because there is an entire unit dedicated to plants. Your tissue, that has a common function, is called an organ. And you are probably familiar with many organs. Your organs, in turn, when they're collected together to form a structural unit that has a common function, are called organ systems. So you're responsible for knowing respiratory, circulatory, and digestive, and knowing the organs of those three systems. You're responsible for knowing 10 systems. But if it's not these three, then you just need to know the function. And you can get that from clicking on the links I have in the Google Doc or continuing through this PowerPoint. In this PowerPoint, I tell you, using some graphics, some of the roles of the organ systems. There is a diagnostic once you've completed the that little chart there that you saw, the graphic, along with some of the links I have in the Google Doc. So I'm just going to pull the Google Doc over here again so we can look at them together. When we scroll down here into the organ systems, you'll see a couple of links here. And these links, what they do is they give you some good prequel into what the organs are about. I like to introduce the organs with the mummy. So I didn't talk about that in my PowerPoint here, and I didn't show you any of the videos. But the mummy, it hails back to an ancient time when they were taking humans and trying to basically preserve them for their passage into to another world. And so I encourage you to take a look at some of those sites, because when they were preparing a person to their entry to the next life, they would often take out the organs, because the organs inside the body would decompose very rapidly, and they put them in special jars. And so they were some of the first, internal researcher or internal doctors that would look at the organs in some kind of detail. And I really like this one here. It's the Body Worlds exhibit. So Body Worlds used to be at the Science Center for, I think, about a year or so. And they have these traveling exhibitions. And so what they've done is people donated their body to science, and they've used this plastinization process where they've basically taken all the organic material and they replaced it with plastic. And these things are amazing. They have people, athletes, artists, animals, even in all different sorts of positions, and you can learn so much about the anatomy because it's all captured in intimate detail. So I encourage you to take a look at that link, and you'll see some very interesting things. Some people are totally not into it. Clearly, everything is closed at the moment, like everything else is in the rest of the world. Then you're going to work through the Nearpod diagnostic. You're going to see a clip of all these different Nearpod organ systems, and you're going to see if you can recognize what they are. So once you've recognized the organ systems and you've written down what they are, do this little exit diagnostic. It's not really a diagnostic because it's after the fact. So do this little exit quiz on Nearpod, and then you can feel good about knowing some material. All right, so there's also organs in plants as well. Roots and shoots. So the roots go below the ground. The shoots include the leaves and the stems and the flowers and the fruits. Right? So in grade 11 bio, in grade 12 bio, we talk about the leaf. You should know the leaf in detail. So you'll see on the Google Doc, there's a place for you to label the leaf. It's this graphic here, so you can just label it. Make sure you have a copy of the various types of tissue and the important organs that are within this organ, if that even makes sense, within this organ system. The leaf is an important part of our learning, but once again, you can take that from the PowerPoint. I don't need to explain anything here. The leaf is a unit that allows carbon dioxide to come in and oxygen to leave, and it conserves the water. And the way that the leaf allows things to come in and out is through little doors on the bottom of the leaf. So these little doors called stoma allow gases to come in and out. And so that has to be controlled, the same way with a door coming in and out of your house. So the stoma or stomata are special doors that allow the entry of gases, carbon dioxide in or oxygen out. Again, we talk much more about that in grade 11 and in grade 12. The stem has very special structures that allow the transport of water up and down, water from the roots up to the leaves, and sap, which is the sugar from the leaves down to the roots where they're stored. It also allows the plant structure, the plant to be supported as it grows towards the sun. And of course, the root anchors the plant into the soil. The meristem, most of it is found, there's a particular meristem that's found in the bottom of the root as it grows towards the water source, and the top of the shoot as it grows towards the sun. Now, the next few slides here give you a little bit of more detail on respiration and how it works, the flow, right? A smoker's lung, that's, it's bad, just don't do it. The circulatory system and how it works, the important parts, the organs, the heart, of course, and the flow, right? So you can look at that. That's how the nutrients flow through our blood. And the digestive system, the important parts, and the flow. So you could use the PowerPoint along with some of the resource links along with the interactive worksheet to get a better understanding of those systems. Okay. On this particular chart here, it tells you some of the important organs of the other organ systems, but if you take a look at the document, you'll see that I've asked you to tell me a description of what each of the organ systems does. Okay, not the parts like I have on the PowerPoint, but what does it do? So you can get that from the resource links as well as from the PowerPoint. Okay, so now we come to really the end of this lesson. The end of this lesson, and this is the important part, this is where the story ends. So we have our cells make tissues, our tissues make organs, our organs make organ systems, and the organ systems all have very specific roles. The respiratory system brings in oxygen and releases carbon dioxide, along with some other things. The digestive system brings in nutrients and gets rid of solid waste. The circulatory system moves and connects and communicates everything around your body. Some systems and some organs play dual roles. The pancreas, it plays a role in the digestive system by releasing enzymes that break apart your nutrients. It also plays a role in the endocrine system by releasing hormones that allows you to bring in glucose into your cells. So some organs play a role in more than one organ system. But regardless, our organ systems are interdependent. They rely on each other. So if you take a look at this graphic here,